organized by two organizations, Alliance for a Secular and Democratic South Asia, which was formed after 1992, right after the Babri Masjid. And it's an organization of activists and academics located in this area, which works for promoting a secular and democratic ideology. The other organization is called Sanhati, which is mainly a web organization, which was formed after some incidents occur in West Bengal, which is part of this larger neoliberal project which is being clamped down on India. So two incidents, one which occurred in Singur and another in Nandigram, really got a lot of activists and academics start thinking about the current neoliberal regime in India. And some of them came together and formed a website, the main objective of which was to present viewpoints, news, analysis of people's movements, mainly which started from West Bengal but now spread to other parts of India, which is not reported in the mainstream press. So this is a collection of articles, and it is updated almost daily, which gives you an idea of the various people's movements going on in different parts of the country. And it also has regular analytical articles by activists and academics who are thinking in terms of a pro-people's viewpoint. The speaker today is Dr. Partho Ray. He is one of the founder members of Sanhati, and he was reporting regularly when the movement started in Lalgarh, and he'll be talking to us today mainly about this region in West Bengal, where a very vibrant movement against various kinds of oppression by the state has started. And he was there right in the middle of the movement, reporting almost weekly. And Sanhati has now collected together a lot of material about the movement in Lalgarh. So Partho will talk to us not only about Lalgarh but also try to situate the movement in Lalgarh within the broader context of India. He's a biologist by training, but today he'll talk about political economy. So without further ado, Partho.
From the top.
Thank you, Dipankar. I would first like to thank the Association for a Secular and Democratic South Asia and the South Asia Forum for organizing this talk and giving me this opportunity to talk about people's movements in India, Lalgarh and beyond. So what I would basically be talking about is like a one-man's engagement with this very important movement which started in this area of West Bengal in 2009 and which is still continuing in various forms. And a lot of it would be my personal experiences, from when I was there. And as Dipankar said, I would like to try to situate it, try to pose to you the position of this movement in the larger picture of people's movements in India. So as Dipankar said, I am by training a molecular biologist, but I have been, since I went back to India from here, I have been involved in these movements with the people who are struggling in various parts of India against various aspects of neoliberalism and a state which is trying to impose neoliberal policies on the people. And this engagement with the people, being part of these movements, has actually fundamentally affected my views, my ideas, my understanding of the situation also. So before I go into the specifics of this talk, I would like to tell that these movements which are now going on in India, and there are many of them happening in every part of the country. These movements are movements by farmers, landless peasants, movements by workers, movements by small like shopkeepers, vendors in the cities, by workers in factories. These are all part of I think what is a worldwide scenario of today of resistance against neoliberalism. This worldwide, you see different aspects of this resistance in for example, the struggles which had started, for example, in the 1990s in Latin America, which has led to fundamental changes in countries like Bolivia, Venezuela, Nicaragua, or Uruguay, and then which you can still see echoing, for example, in the uprising in the Arab world, or in the great resistances which is taking place in Europe, for example, in Greece, Spain, Portugal, etc. So in India, when from 1990-91, when these neoliberal policies were introduced, as in the name of liberalization, privatization, globalization, in short the LPG policies as we said, which were enforced through structural adjustment programs which are prescribed by the World Bank and IMF. Since then, people have really been hit hard. People's lives and livelihoods all over the country, people who are like landless peasants, the indigenous people of India whom we call Adivasis, workers in factories, petty shop owners in the cities, everyone's life has been affected in some way or the other. This has happened in various ways by the withdrawal of the state from various like social sectors, for example, like shutting down of seed corporations, like or state organizations which used to supply seed at a low cost, state credit, for example, like rural banking sector which used to give cheap credit to farmers, which was discontinued, to like large scale closure of factories, large scale closure of whole industries in cities. Which I guess some of you have experience of, like for example the so-called Rust Belt in the northern part of the US, where I have worked, like Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Detroit area, where there has been large scale closure of industries. So there are cities in India also where there have been large scale closure of indigenous industries because of neoliberal policies, which has allowed complete plunder, in one word, by various national and multinational corporations. And the financialization of capital which has taken place has strengthened the hands of this corporates. And then what has happened is that they have increasingly gone on to what I characterize as a new form of primitive accumulation. Basically, they see that when they cannot get the profit, when they cannot extract profit from just labor productivity, for example, they have gone into things like basically taking over land, taking over mineral resources, taking over forest resources. And that is where the direct conflicts have started. So peoples were already pushed against the wall. And when these peoples lost their basis of livelihood, the forest, the water, the land, which in India we call in one phrase, Jal, Jangal, Zameen. Okay? When this were affected, people started fighting back. And the fight back started from like the end of the 90s, for example, in Orissa. This is a state in eastern India where places like Kashipur, where people actually resisted this acquisition of land for setting up industries, and then it spread to other parts of India, and there has been a continuous struggles like that from the end of the 90s, and it went into the 2000 when the conditions in India even became worse as a result of the recession. Means you might be hearing that the recession hasn't affected India, but it has affected it in various ways. So these struggles became more acute, and these struggles reached a flashpoint in the state from where I come, a state in the eastern part of India called West Bengal. In these places which Dipankar referred to, Singur and Nandigram, where there was attempts to do large-scale land acquisition using a law which is an eminent domain law. Eminent domain means where land is acquired by the state, which shows public interest for taking land, but these lands were being acquired by the state in order to be handed over to private corporations for setting up industries. And then there were massive resistance by the people of these areas. Okay, means there was state oppression, and then people resisted in these areas, and that gave rise to a whole new dimension to these movements. people knew that they could stand up against the state and stop the state in its tracks. So that then enriched the entire movemental space in India, and that has given rise to this multitude of movements, which Lalgarh has been like a significant and an important spot. So before I go into this, I'll show this map. So this is a map of India where all these places which are called the special economic zones have been shown. Special economic zones are like the epitome of neoliberalism in India. There are large tracts of land which have been acquired by the state and handed over to various private corporations for setting up the special economic zones, where half of the laws of the Indian constitution are kept in suspension. So these are basically like sovereign enclaves within India. There are no so the labor laws are not applicable. These places, the industries over here do not have to pay the normal taxes. So, and this have increasingly become places which have been used for real estate speculation, just profiteering and like exploitation of workers. So this is a map which shows this clusters of the special economic zone. This is basically modeled over, I guess some of you know about the maquiladoras in Mexico. They are basically the sweatshops set up in the northern states of Mexico, basically to cater to US industrial interests. So this is basically maquiladoras in India. These are supposed to produce things only for export, but what they have really become are places where this IT or the IT enabled services like call centers for foreign companies, etc. are located. So, and there has been resistance against this in various parts of India, and these various flashpoints are, as you see, Singur, Nandigram, then Lalgarh in the western part in Maharashtra, Mangalore in Karnataka, Amritsar, etc. So this has been against this special economic zones, and so wherever there has been this land acquisition for special economic zone or for other things, people have actually resisted. So I say that the people have risen in various parts of India, as you can see over here, and these struggles are continuing every day. As I talk over here in this place called Dhinkia, which you see on the eastern coast of Orissa, thousands of people, poor villagers, are fighting to save their lands, their farms from a Korean multinational called POSCO, in which Warren Buffett is actually the major shareholder, to protect that in this place. So this struggle is going on at the moment as I speak in front of you. So this has been one aspect of this. The other hand is to see this large region which I have pointed out in red in the central part of India, central eastern part of India, where as you can see there are nearly no SEZs. Okay, the reason why there are no SEZs over here is because there has been a long-term insurgent movement going on over here, which is led by the Communist Party of India Maoists, who have been, which is based among the indigenous people present in these areas, the Adivasis, and which have been resisting this corporate aggression in this area, and they are spreading in large territories of India. And the easternmost part of this territory actually abuts with these three districts of West Bengal, which we call Jungle Mahal, the forested regions basically. So these three districts of West Midnapur, Purulia and Bankura are the three districts in West Bengal which has the highest concentration of the Adivasi population. And this is the area, this is the Adivasis in India, the indigenous people, as indigenous people in North America, have historically been the most exploited section of Indian society. The exploitation had gone on from like time immemorial, during all regimes in India, starting from like mythological times, I would say, and then was highly accentuated during the British rule and has continued in independent India. And a reason for the misfortune, I would say, what has happened is that this region of where they are coincides with the most mineral-rich region of India, and possibly one of the most mineral-rich regions of the entire world. This region is like incredibly rich in iron ore, coal, magnesium, tungsten, any industrial, any mineral which is required for industrial needs, you can speak about. And it has now become a policy of the state and of the corporates to remove this from this region, to be able to take away the lands in order to allow this mining interest to start over there. And therefore these Adivasis are resisting in this entire belt in the states of West Bengal, Jharkhand, Orissa, Chhattisgarh, and this Maoist insurgency is going on over there as an important part of this spectrum of resistances which we see in India today. So Lalgarh is a part of the Jungle Mahal area. Okay, it's basically a block in this western district of West Midnapur. A block is something like a county over here, and this region has had a history of exploitation, of oppression by the state. So I was here when this movement started in 2009, like October, November, because a company and a corporation called the Jindal Steel Works had acquired like 3,000 acres of land there in order to set up an integrated steel plant. So this land, it has been said in the media in India that this was like barren land, there was no agriculture over there, people had voluntarily given their land, etc., etc., and people were very happy. So I, as a part of a SEZ watchdog group, a group which actually struggles against this SEZs, had gone to this area for a fact finding to see what's the condition on the ground. And this is a picture of this area where this SEZ was actually inaugurated just like 3 days before we went over there by the chief minister, like the head of this state of West Bengal. And while he was returning from this site of inauguration, the CPI Maoists, the insurgents, they blasted a landmine near his convoy. Okay, and this the state took as a pretext of going into these villages nearby, the villages populated by the indigenous people, and letting loose a reign of terror, which was like horrible. Okay, so we had gone over there at this point of time when this terror was actually continuing, and this terror is like, means the police had gone into villages during the night, pulled out people from their homes, beaten them up black and blue, especially targeted women in these villages, because they think that by targeting women, by oppressing women, they can actually break down the will of the community. And anyone who had protested had been like beaten up, had been tortured like anything. Means I have met people. There is a known person whom I knew, who with his pregnant wife had gone to a pharmacy to buy medicines, and he was like pulled out of the pharmacy, and the police were on the point of taking him away, and his wife tried to stop the police, and they pushed him on the ground and kicked her in her abdomen. This pregnant woman over there. So this is the type of oppression which had started in this November 2009 over there, and we were there at this point of time. And what we found about the SEZ is a different story. Means that is a different talk, has to be, because the type of we went and saw it was a completely like agricultural area. I don't know if you can see over these slides. It's an agricultural area. There was standing crops on the ground. Like people had just harvested their crops, and now this entire area is enclosed by a wall. And from like 2009, they have not done anything on this land except like stopping all access to the land, because apparently the international steel prices have gone down, and so they don't find it profitable to start the industry over there. The only thing is that all agriculture has stopped in this area. There are around 10,000 people in the villages around whose access to this land is gone, their livelihood is gone, there is like distress migration happening from this area, and all this time the government had said that people had willingly given their land, and people had got compensation. The compensation is also like funny. You would if it wasn't such a distressing thing, I would have been amused. People have apparently been given like shares in this company, like bonds in this company, which was supposed to be built over here, and and the company never started, but the factory never started. But this company went to the stock exchange and showed that all those shares has been sold. So their market capitalization actually they showed to have increased. Okay, and their stock values went up, their share values went up. And these people, they are asking me in the villages that what is this share? Can we buy like cooking oil with this from the shops? So this is the type of thing which they have done over there. So there has been this substratum of resistance against this project over there for a long time, and over and above this, this oppression was let loose. And these people have faced this oppression for a long time. And now what happened in this early November 2009, the people rose up. And this was an uprising which was unprecedented in its scale and nature. I mean, the state has never expected to see such an uprising. The indigenous people in India have a history of uprisings. They have risen multiple times against the British. So, and the Maoists who have worked in this area have actually have enhanced their consciousness also in many ways, their political organization, this political work in this area. So these people rose in an unprecedented way. And this was something what I was there, and I was possibly the only person over there with a camera in hand, so I documented it by just taking pictures as much as I could. A lot of these pictures of the movement which you see all around are these photographs which I took, fortunately, and which has become somewhat like a living documentation of this movement as it started. So what they did basically was to set up blockades in all the access ways. So this is a forested area, whatever roads were there were dug up, and they set up blockades on those roads, and they stopped the access of all policemen, of all state forces over there. So this entire area populated by around 50,000 people became a liberated area overnight. There were no police. When the police weren't around, whatever police camps were there inside, and the police camps over there historically has been basically set up by occupying schools. This is unbelievable that in a country, in a democratic country, the police goes and occupies schools and keeps them occupied for 10 years and runs police camps, whereas the students have to sit in the courtyard of the school and do classes. Okay, so this is what the thing. What these people did, they just locked up the police camp. I saw one of the police camps, which was the gates were locked and they threw the keys in the nearby pond. So the police were, the tables had been turned. So all this time these people had been cowering in their homes and the police had been running amok. Now the police were cowering in their camps, fortified camps, and the people were out on the streets basically. And all these blockades had this sort of, these posters on them, as you can see, this lights. So these are blockades which were made by like cutting down tree trunks and putting them on the roads. And as you can see, it says that indefinite road blockade against police atrocities on women. This police atrocities on women had touched a raw nerve. And people rose because there has been a history of police oppression against women, which you will see over there. And very interestingly, you can see that these posters were signed by a new entity in the politics of India called the people. Means the people, after being mentioned in the preamble of our constitution, that we the people had been conveniently forgotten in democratic India. So here, people called Janashadharan means the common people, were actually putting up posters and saying that we now declare ourselves to be liberated from this democratic, quote-unquote democratic state. And there were posters like this, and these posters were all signed by the people, basically over there. And so all the access ways have been blocked. So we were taken in by forest through the forest into this area.
No.
This is so inflammatory, I guess, that it has gone blank. So as soon as it hears about the people, it goes blank.
Something happened.
So it might be some big photograph which is there.
Keep talking.
Okay, so I guess it might come on its own.
I'll try to do something while you speak.
Yeah. So what was happening was is it running from here?
That's what I'm wondering.
Oh, so I guess that's.
Yeah, I can go.
So what was happening was that people were organizing in a completely new way. So people from various villages were converging into this common fields over there, common areas, and they were holding huge mass meetings. Okay, meetings being attended by 10,000, 15,000, 50,000 people at a time, and these meetings were actually taking decisions. Okay. They were taking decisions on how to tackle the police, on how to go ahead with the movement, and there were like from every village they were electing committees, new committees which they were calling the people's committees, each of which had like 5 men and 5 women in these committees, and these committees were actually then coming together into the central part where they were coming and discussing and forming and taking decisions over there. And every decision had to be ratified by this General Assembly. and this general assemblies were like taking place on a daily basis. So on any day, if you go into this large area which is called the chowk, which is like a central square in these villages, you would see 10,000 people sitting over there and discussing, deliberating about issues which are actually very important for this life. Nothing like this has happened in India before. So, and people like me who were like from outside were actually, so there might be a large. So then people were coming together and were like taking the decisions. Just skip this slide. Yeah. So this was the trajectory the movement was taking, and in from all the villages, these people used to come, and there is to be like fundamental changes in this indigenous communities which were taking place. For example, women's participation in this public affairs have actually been very limited in this traditional community. So this was now highly enhanced, because there were women participating in large number in all these deliberations. And I could see like real leadership emerging from among this women. The women were whenever there were confrontations with the police, the women were in the forefront, and they were actually putting like cogent demands in front of the police. So this is the problem. This is just a text. But this is just a text. So anyway, so the thing what was there, so these people came up with a set of 13 demands. Okay, so these demands were like the central demands of this movement, and all these committees from the various villages, they came together to form a sort of committee which was operating now like at the central level, at the level of this assembly, which came to be known as the People's Committee Against Police Atrocities. So PCPA. So that is the committee which then spearheaded the struggle, and the leadership in this committee were actually emerged from the movement. They were not like leaders of some established political parties or from any such established leadership from the local leadership. Actually, the local leadership, including the traditional leadership of the indigenous people, were completely discredited during this process, because they could not take a strong stand during this movement. So the new leadership emerged from within this movement, and they said very clearly that the state has to talk with us, with the people. State has to talk with us publicly in this public assembly, and the state has to apologize for these atrocities. So, and the way they said was something very unique. They said that the state, being represented by the superintendent of police, basically has to hold his ears in front of the people and say that I am sorry. This is a very traditional way of how basically people, like they berate or scold like infants, So this is like the ultimate indignity which people could place on the state. Which people said that, okay, means you are supposed to be public servants, you are supposed to serve the public. So now if you have done these atrocities on the public, you have to come out publicly and apologize in this way. So that is what, and all the negotiations which started actually broke down on this point. Okay, the state said that, oh, it's unthinkable that how can we who are like the arbiters of people's destinies, how can we ask for like forgiveness from people?
This is a mismatch.
Maybe leave it like that.
Yeah.
Maybe leave it.
Yeah,
like
maybe
that.
just leave it like that. Okay, that's a great idea. Let me just show it.
Yeah, that's that
The
mode.
moment I
is fine.
select the slideshow, it's hanging.
Just
Oh,
extend
it's
the
not
display.
coming.
Have you taken
Stretch
it
the
out?
display.
We can take it out now because it's on your card.